What happens when a tech billionaire worth $8.4 billion walks into a courtroom believing his army of lawyers and unlimited resources can crush a single mother fighting for her daughter's life? Michael Harrington, CEO of Tech Venture Global, sat in that Washington, D.C. courtroom with 17 attorneys surrounding him, confident that Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg would be just another obstacle his money could overcome. But when this 84-year-old justice looked into his eyes and asked one simple question, everything this arrogant man believed about power, privilege, and justice came crashing down. What happened next would become the most viral moment in modern Supreme Court history. The defendant's lead attorney stood before Justice Ginsburg and declared, "Your Honor, my client's wealth and success speak to his character. Surely a man who built a $50 billion company deserves the benefit of the doubt." The courtroom fell into an uncomfortable silence. But Justice Ginsburg, removing her iconic glasses slowly, was about to deliver a response that would be replayed millions of times across every social media platform in America. Before we dive into this extraordinary case, less than 5% of you are actually subscribed. If you believe that justice should be equal for everyone, whether you're a billionaire or a single mother working 2 jobs, hit that subscribe button right now. This story is going to restore your faith in the American legal system, and you don't want to miss what Justice Ginsburg does next. It's a humid morning in July 2017, and the courtroom in the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit is packed beyond capacity. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, sitting on a special panel for this case due to its constitutional significance, reviews her notes one final time. At 84 years old, she has presided over countless cases. But something about this one has captured national attention. The plaintiff is 36-year-old Sarah Chen, a single mother and former software engineer at Tech Venture Global. The defendant is Michael Harrington, the company's CEO, a man whose face has been on the cover of Forbes, Time, and Fortune. His net worth exceeds the GDP of small nations. The case file tells a heartbreaking story. 2 years ago, Sarah Chen's 8-year-old daughter, Emma, was diagnosed with a rare form of leukemia. The treatment required experimental medication that cost $780,000 per year. Sarah's health insurance through Tech Venture Global initially approved the treatment, and Emma began responding beautifully. But 6 months into treatment, Tech Venture Global suddenly changed its insurance policy, categorizing Emma's medication as experimental and not medically necessary, and cut off coverage immediately. Sarah fought the decision through every internal channel. She appealed, she begged, she provided documentation from Emma's oncologist at Johns Hopkins stating the treatment was absolutely essential. Nothing worked. With Emma's life hanging in the balance, Sarah made a desperate decision. She accessed Tech Venture's internal database and leaked emails that proved Michael Harrington had personally ordered the insurance change to cut costs, specifically targeting expensive treatments, and that he had written in an internal memo, "We cannot allow employee sympathy cases to destroy our bottom line. These people need to understand that life isn't fair." Sarah was immediately fired, arrested for corporate espionage, and sued by Harrington personally for $50 million in damages. The criminal charges were eventually dropped when prosecutors saw the evidence, but Harrington's civil lawsuit continued. He wanted to make an example of her, to show that no employee could embarrass him and his company. But Sarah countersued, claiming wrongful termination, violation of whistleblower protections, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. And that's what brings them to this courtroom today, before Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The gallery is filled with reporters, Tech Venture employees who secretly support Sarah, parent advocacy groups, and legal scholars who recognize this case could set precedent for corporate accountability. The energy in the room is electric. At exactly 9 a.m., Justice Ginsburg's clerk calls the court to order. All rise for the Honorable Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Everyone stands as Justice Ginsburg enters, her small frame somehow commanding the entire room. She's wearing her signature black robe with an ornate lace collar, the one she wears when she means business. She takes her seat and surveys the courtroom with those penetrating eyes that have seen decades of injustice and fought tirelessly to correct it. Michael Harrington enters through the side door, and the contrast is striking. He's wearing a suit that costs more than most people's monthly salary, custom-made Italian leather shoes, and a watch that could fund Emma's treatment for an entire year. He walks with the confidence of a man who has never lost anything in his life. Behind him march his 17 attorneys, each carrying expensive leather briefcases, looking like an invading army. On the other side sits Sarah Chen, wearing a simple dress from Target, her eyes exhausted from 2 years of fighting, working multiple jobs to pay for Emma's treatment out of pocket, and battling a legal system designed to favor people exactly like Michael Harrington. Behind her sits one attorney, James Morrison, a 67-year-old civil rights lawyer who took her case pro bono because he believed in justice. Justice Ginsburg looks at both parties and begins. We are here today to hear arguments in Chen versus Harrington. Before we proceed with formal arguments, I want to establish some ground rules. This courtroom is a place of equality. I don't care about net worth, company size, or how many attorneys you can afford. What I care about is the law, the facts, and fundamental human decency. Is that understood? The room murmurs in agreement. Harrington's lead attorney, Marcus Wellington, a shark known for destroying opponents, stands up. Your Honor, we understand completely, and we're confident that when you hear the facts, you'll see that my client acted entirely within his rights as CEO. Justice Ginsburg's expression doesn't change. We'll see about that, Counselor. Ms. Chen, how is your daughter? The question catches everyone off guard. This isn't typical courtroom procedure, but Justice Ginsburg has never been typical. Sarah stands, her voice shaking. Your Honor, Emma is alive, but barely. Without the medication, her cancer returned aggressively. We've been doing crowdfunding, I work 3 jobs, and her oncologist has been helping us get sample medications from the pharmaceutical company. But it's not enough. She needs consistent treatment. Justice Ginsburg nods, and there's something in her eyes, a flash of personal pain. Those who know her history know she's a 2-time cancer survivor herself. Thank you, Ms. Chen. Please sit. She turns to Michael Harrington. Mr. Harrington, stand up, please. Harrington stands, still smirking slightly, still confident. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Harrington, did you personally order the insurance policy change that terminated coverage for Ms. Chen's daughter? Wellington jumps up. Your Honor, I must object. That question, Counselor, Justice Ginsburg's voice cuts through the room like a knife. I asked Mr. Harrington, not you. Sir, answer the question. Harrington clears his throat. Your Honor, as CEO, I make thousands of decisions regarding company policy. The insurance restructuring was a necessary business decision to ensure Tech Venture's financial health. That's not what I asked, Justice Ginsburg says, her voice calm but firm. Did you personally order the change that specifically cut off Emma Chen's medication? There's a pause. Harrington glances at his attorneys. Yes, Your Honor, but it wasn't personal. It was business. The courtroom reacts with gasps and whispers. Justice Ginsburg holds up her hand for silence. It wasn't personal, she repeats slowly. Mr. Harrington, do you have children? Wellington stands again. Your Honor, I really must object to this line of questioning. My client's personal life is absolutely relevant, Justice Ginsburg interrupts. Mr. Harrington, answer the question. I have 3 children, Your Honor, Harrington responds, his confidence beginning to waver. And if one of them became ill with a life-threatening disease, would you consider the decision to deny them treatment just business? The question hangs in the air like a guillotine blade. Harrington stammers. That's different, Your Honor. I would have the resources to… Exactly, Justice Ginsburg interrupts. You would have the resources. But Ms. Chen, who worked for your company loyally for 6 years, who helped build the software that made you billions, she doesn't have those resources. So when you cut off her daughter's treatment, what exactly did you expect her to do? But guys, before I tell you what happens next, I need you to understand something. In the comments below, tell me, have you or someone you love ever been denied medical treatment because of cost? Have you watched insurance companies put profits over human lives? Share your story, because this case is about more than Sarah and Emma. This is about every family in America fighting a system rigged against them. Wellington, sensing his client is drowning, takes over. Your Honor, with all due respect, Tech Venture Global has the right to structure its benefits program as it sees fit. Ms. Chen had other options. She could have purchased supplemental insurance. She could have… On a software engineer's salary while raising a child alone? Justice Ginsburg interjects. Counselor, have you ever actually looked at the cost of supplemental insurance for experimental cancer treatments? Wellington hesitates. Your Honor, I have, Justice Ginsburg says. I've lived through cancer twice. I know exactly what these treatments cost and what insurance companies try to avoid paying for. So please don't stand in my courtroom and suggest that Ms. Chen had realistic alternatives when you know perfectly well she didn't. The judge's personal revelation stuns the courtroom. This isn't just legal theory to her. This is lived experience. Justice Ginsburg continues. But let's talk about what Ms. Chen did next. She accessed company emails and leaked them to the press. Mr. Wellington, you've characterized this as corporate espionage, theft of proprietary information, and betrayal of company trust. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. That's exactly what it was. And you're asking this court to award your client $50 million in damages for that betrayal? We are, Your Honor. My client's reputation was severely damaged. The company's stock price dropped, and… His feelings were hurt? Justice Ginsburg's tone is sharp. Counselor, let me read you something. She picks up a document from her desk. This is from the email Ms. Chen leaked. Your client, Mr. Harrington, wrote, "We cannot allow employee sympathy cases to destroy our bottom line. These people need to understand that life isn't fair. If we start making exceptions for sick children, where does it end?" The courtroom erupts. Justice Ginsburg allows it for a moment before calling for order. Mr. Harrington, she says, looking directly at the CEO, do you stand by those words? Harrington's face has gone red. Your Honor, that email was taken out of context. What I meant was… What you meant, Justice Ginsburg interrupts, was exactly what you wrote. You decided that Emma Chen's life was worth less than your company's bottom line. You decided that fairness doesn't matter. And when Ms. Chen exposed your decision, you decided to destroy her financially to silence her and anyone else who might dare to challenge you. Wellington tries again. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. You seem to have already made up your mind about… About what, Counselor? About whether a corporation has the right to let a child die to save money? About whether a whistleblower who exposes such a decision deserves to be punished? Yes, I have strong feelings about that, because this isn't just about the law. This is about the kind of society we want to be. She looks at Sarah Chen, whose tears are flowing freely now. Ms. Chen, when you leaked those emails, did you know you would be fired and sued? Sarah stands, wiping her tears. Yes, Your Honor. But I didn't know what else to do. They were going to let my daughter die, and I couldn't let that happen without people knowing why. And if you had to do it again? I'd do it again tomorrow, Your Honor. Emma is everything to me. Justice Ginsburg nods. Mr. Morrison, your client's defense rests on whistleblower protection statutes. Is that correct? Sarah's attorney stands. Yes, Your Honor. We believe Ms. Chen was exposing illegal and unethical corporate practices, which is protected speech under federal law. And Mr. Wellington, your position is that no such protection applies because Ms. Chen violated her employment contract and non-disclosure agreement? Correct, Your Honor. Then let me ask you this, Counselor. What exactly is the purpose of whistleblower protection laws? Wellington responds carefully. To protect employees who report illegal activity. And does illegal activity only mean violations of criminal statutes, or does it also encompass violations of human decency, medical ethics, and basic moral obligations? Your Honor, there's no law requiring a company to provide unlimited medical coverage for— But there are laws, Justice Ginsburg interrupts, her voice rising slightly, requiring companies to act in good faith with their employees. There are regulations about changing insurance coverage without proper notice, and there are certainly ethical guidelines about not letting children die when you have the power and resources to save them. She pauses, letting her words settle over the courtroom. Here's what I see when I look at this case. I see a man who built an empire on the backs of employees like Ms. Chen. I see a man who made billions while those employees trusted that their hard work would be rewarded with basic security and protection. And I see a man who, when faced with a choice between his bottom line and a child's life, chose money. Harrington stands up suddenly. Your Honor, I object. You're making me out to be some kind of monster. Sit down, Mr. Harrington, Justice Ginsburg says firmly. You don't get to object. You're not an attorney. But since you're standing, let me ask you directly. Are you a monster? The question reverberates through the courtroom. No, Harrington says, his voice barely audible. Then explain to me why you're suing a mother for $50 million for trying to save her dying daughter. Harrington looks at his attorneys, but they have no answers for him. Because she broke the rules. The rules, Justice Ginsburg repeats. Mr. Harrington, I've spent my entire career fighting against rules that were designed to keep people powerless. Rules that said women couldn't be lawyers. Rules that said minorities couldn't vote. Rules that said the poor and vulnerable should simply accept their fate. And every time, people like you defended those rules because they benefited from them. She stands up from her bench, a rare move that signals something momentous is coming. Let me tell you what I think about your rules. Your non-disclosure agreement, your employment contract, your insurance policy restructuring, they're all legal documents designed to protect your wealth and power. But there's something more important than any contract, any corporate policy, any amount of money, and that's human life. That's human dignity. That's the fundamental principle that we are all equal, whether we're billionaires or single mothers. The courtroom is completely silent. Every person is hanging on her words. Ms. Chen violated your corporate policies, Mr. Harrington, but you violated something far more sacred. You violated the trust of an employee who gave you 6 years of her life. You violated the basic human obligation to help when you have the power to do so, and you violated the promise that America makes to all its citizens, that we take care of each other, especially the most vulnerable among us. Justice Ginsburg sits back down, and when she speaks again, her voice carries the weight of absolute moral authority. Here is my ruling. Mr. Harrington's lawsuit against Ms. Chen is dismissed with prejudice. Not only is it dismissed, but I am ordering Mr. Harrington and Tech Venture Global to pay Ms. Chen's legal fees, to immediately reinstate Emma Chen's full medical coverage, including all experimental treatments, and to establish a $10 million fund dedicated to covering medical expenses for employees' children with life-threatening illnesses. The courtroom explodes in applause and tears. Sarah Chen collapses into her chair, sobbing. But Justice Ginsburg isn't finished. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the Federal Trade Commission and the Department of Labor for investigation into Tech Venture Global's insurance practices and whether they violated federal regulations regarding employee benefits. Harrington's attorneys are scrambling, whispering urgently to their client. And, Mr. Harrington, Justice Ginsburg says, her eyes locked on the CEO, I want you to understand something. You came into this courtroom believing your wealth made you untouchable. You believed your army of lawyers could overwhelm one single mother. You believed that justice was something you could buy. But in my courtroom, your billions mean nothing. In my courtroom, everyone is equal. And in my courtroom, a mother fighting for her daughter's life will always matter more than a CEO fighting to protect his bottom line. She pauses and then delivers the final blow. You have 30 days to comply with this order. If you fail to do so, I will hold you in contempt, and you will discover that even billionaires can go to jail. Do you understand me, Mr. Harrington? Harrington, completely defeated, can barely speak. Yes, Your Honor. Good. This court is adjourned. The gavel comes down, and the courtroom erupts once more. Reporters rush out to file their stories. Parent advocacy groups are cheering. Sarah Chen is surrounded by supporters, everyone crying tears of joy and relief. But the most powerful moment happens next. Justice Ginsburg steps down from her bench and does something unprecedented. She walks over to Sarah Chen and takes her hand. Your daughter is going to be okay, Justice Ginsburg says quietly. And you did nothing wrong. You did what any mother would do. You fought for your child. Sarah can't even speak. She just nods, tears streaming down her face. Justice Ginsburg turns to leave, but then she pauses and looks back at Michael Harrington, who is standing alone, his attorneys having stepped away. Mr. Harrington, she says, I hope you learn something from this. Wealth without compassion is worthless. Power without responsibility is tyranny, and success without humanity is failure. 6 months later, Emma Chen was in complete remission. The experimental treatment, fully covered by Tech Venture Global, had saved her life. Sarah returned to work as a software engineer at a competing tech company that valued her courage and integrity. Michael Harrington issued a public apology and announced that Tech Venture Global was implementing comprehensive healthcare reforms, including unlimited coverage for life-threatening illnesses. Whether his change of heart was genuine or simply good PR, the result was that hundreds of employees and their families received better care. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's decision was cited in 17 subsequent cases involving corporate accountability and whistleblower protection. Law schools began teaching it as an example of moral courage on the bench. And Sarah Chen? She started a nonprofit called Emma's Fight that helps families navigate insurance denials and connects them with legal resources. She speaks at conferences, sharing her story and Justice Ginsburg's words. In my courtroom, everyone is equal. If this story moved you, if you believe that justice should be equal for everyone regardless of wealth, share this video right now. Like this video if you believe corporations should value human life over profit margins. Subscribe for more incredible stories that prove one person with courage can change the system. And remember Justice Ginsburg's words. Wealth without compassion is worthless. That's the legacy of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That's the courage of Sarah Chen. And that's the lesson Michael Harrington learned the hard way. Justice served, lives saved, hope restored. Comment below with your thoughts.